Welcome back to Zero to Hero. Today we're doing another comprehensive turn-by-turn match analysis. This time we're looking at one of the quarterfinal matches from the recent San Antonio Regional, featuring Shiliang Tang and Andrew Figueras. This time the format is Regulation G, where players are allowed one restricted Pokemon on their team. In this set, we'll take particular note of how both players position around their restricted Pokemon, as well as how Shiliang adjusts from game 1 to 2. As usual, we'll break down each of their teams, consider the matchup, then analyze each of the 3 games turn by turn. Both players have released their spread, including their EVs, so we will mention that a little bit when discussing the teams. First up, we'll discuss Shiliang's team. Just before we get into it, make sure to subscribe if you haven't. I know this sounds crazy with the channel growth lately, but still exactly 100% of viewers remain unsubscribed, so let's change that. It includes Ogerpon Hearthflame, Calyrex Ice, Urshifu Rapid, Landorus Incarnate, Amoonguss, and Roaring Moon. What's the game plan of this team? His restricted Pokemon in Calyrex Ice is the star of the show here. With some speed investment, it's able to outspeed opposing threats with Tailwind, but it's still slow enough to underspeed many common threats in Trick Room. With 2 redirectors, this team is very heavily centered on allowing Calyrex Ice to deal most of the damage, while Landorus and Urshifu are able to support it for matchups it doesn't do great into. On first glance, this is a Tail Room team, with access to Trick Room on Calyrex and Tailwind on Roaring Moon. Amoonguss can support and work well with Calyrex under Trick Room, while the rest of the team is quite fast and works great with Tailwind. And your likely first impression is correct. This is a Tail Room team. However, the EV spreads of these Pokemon are very unusual, and are what made this team so successful. Ogerpon, Landorus, and Urshifu are all trained to be very bulky. Despite their naturally fast speed stats, they have relatively low speed investment. So little in fact, Ogerpon specifically is nearly maximum physical bulk with an impish nature. This seems odd for a fast attacker, but this EV spread allows it to survive a Ivy Cudgel from Ogerpon Cornerstone, as well as not be 2-hit KO'd by opposing Calyrex's Glacial Lance. Being so bulky, it's a great partner for Calyrex, being able to use Follow Me to allow Calyrex to set up Trick Room and then sweep after. The odd speed investment from all of these Pokemon allows them to function in Trick Room against faster teams since their speed is lower than what you would expect, but it still allows them to outspeed other opposing teams that don't have Tailwind when you can set your own Tailwind. He also has a very unusual pick in the current metagame in Roaring Moon. When discussing his team, one of the thought processes into using this Pokemon was that he wanted something that would resist opposing Fire-Water Grass cores. Being a Dragon type, it does just that, as well as providing support with Tailwind and pretty decent damage with Terra Flying and Acrobatics. The booster energy will be consumed right away, giving it that Acrobatics boost. Another uncommon choice is Taunt on Urshifu. This unexpected option can shut down opposing support Pokemon, particularly opponents with speed control, allowing him to maintain speed control in the game. The last niche choice is Covert Cloak on Amoonguss. It generally runs something like Rocky Helmet or Citrus Berry, but Shiliang Tang and Justin Tang worked together to build this team, and they identified that a significant weakness of this team was opposing Fake Out, so having a Covert Cloak on the team really helped them get past that. So the team overall has a solid Trick Room and Tailwind modes that are able to mix and match multiple of their Pokemon, particularly Urshifu, Landorus, and Ogerpon, all work great in both modes thanks to their low speed investment. The 2 of them did a 1-hour recap of their process in building this whole team, so I'll refer you to that video with a link in the description if you're interested in more of the specifics. But for today, let's move on to looking at Andrew's team. Koraidon, Umbreon, Raging Bolt, Fluttermane, Ogerpon Cornerstone, and Entei. This is yet another Sun team, which seems to be a common theme in our replay analysis so far, but this one is very different from the other Sun teams we saw in Reg H. Koraidon is his restricted Pokemon of choice here, which sets the Sun on Switch in with its ability Aurachal Impulse. Not only is this a lesser used restricted Pokemon in the format, but so is its set. At least it was at the time of the tournament. Loaded Dice with Scale Shot allows Koraidon to dish out big damage and get a speed boost after attacking. Terra Fire is a great Terra type, giving it stab on a Sun boosted Flare Blitz, as well as removing its weaknesses to Ice and Fairy by turning them into resistances. The 2 Paradox Pokemon on the team, Fluttermane and Raging Bolt, both activate their ability Photosynthesis when the sun is up, allowing both of them to forego using the booster energy item to get the boost from their ability and hold a different item. Raging Bolt is trained to get a special attack boost. While it holds the Assault Vest item, this Pokemon is incredibly tanky and hits very hard in the sun. Volt Switch is another uncommon choice on this Pokemon. This gives Andrew an option for a pivoting move, perhaps allowing him to get his Koraidon in more than once when he needs to reset the sun. Fluttermane gets a speed boost from its ability in the sun, while allowing it to hold the Focus Sash item. Again, an unusual moveset here as Andrew forgoes the common Shadow Ball in place for 2 fairy attacks in Moonblast and Dazzling Gleam. Terra Fairy here allows Fluttermane to dish out the huge damage we were used to seeing from it in prior formats. With the vast majority of Fluttermanes being supportive in Reg G, Andrew is going for something a little different here with a highly offensive Fluttermane, which we see as he invested 252 EVs in special attack. Entei also benefits from the sun. With the Choice Band and a sun-boosted Sacred Fire, this Pokemon hits incredibly hard. Inner Focus also allows it to ignore any Intimidate. This is a great choice to pair with Koraidon, that way you have 2 physical attackers that can benefit from the sun, and one of them is immune to Intimidate, while the other just gets a damage boost from its item. Ogerpon Cornerstone is here as well. Offensive rock coverage is incredible for this team, and Sturdy is great for a second Focus Sash. It can also redirect for any of the other powerful threats. Umbreon is the last Pokemon on the team, and one that also benefits from the Sun boost with its move Moonlight. This move recovers 75% HP in Sun, compared to its 50% without any weather. Foul Play also allows this incredibly tanky Pokemon to deal significant damage to things like opposing Calyrexes, while Taunt and Yawn can really disrupt opponents. So what does the matchup look like? Since we have both of these players' EV spreads, we can analyze this matchup a bit more than others. We know Shiliang's team has very unusual speed investment, and his frail Pokemon are much bulkier than you would expect. This allows him to take advantage of both Tailwind and Trick Room. Andrew's team, on the other hand, is very fast. Fluttermane and Ogerpon are both max speed, while Koraidon and Entei are heavily invested. With Shiliang's speed tiers, this is a perfect matchup to take advantage of his Tail Room. He can outspeed all of Andrew's threats with the Tailwind, perhaps barring booster speed Fluttermane, or he can underspeed them all with a Trick Room. As mentioned, Trick Room will allow his typically faster Pokemon to underspeed Andrew's faster Pokemon. If Shiliang were to try to outspeed things with Tailwind, he'll still have to contend with that booster speed Fluttermane, which as mentioned could outspeed his middling speed threats even if they have Tailwind. And he'll have to contend with things like Scale Shot Koraidon, which can get a speed boost, and again, might be faster than these middling speed mons with the Tailwind. Considering those 2 threats, and the fact that Calyrex has one of the best matchups into this team, it's very likely that he'll go with a Trick Room mode rather than Tailwind. Andrew's offense though is no joke, and this team hits very hard, especially in the sun. Again, this match there will be no way to overwrite the sun. It will be a pretty even matchup, as Andrew will want to eliminate Shiliang's speed control threats in Calyrex Ice or Roaring Moon before they can get going, as without any speed control of his own, Andrew's Pokemon will be moving first. So we can likely expect Andrew to lead heavy offense and try to dish out as much damage as he can while he can, while we can expect Shiliang to try and use probably Redirection from Ogerpon or Amoonguss to try and get his Trick Room up early, and then sweep from there. Andrew will probably bring Umbreon and Raging Bolt on his team as some way to fight in Trick Room against Shiliang. Andrew probably leaves Fluttermane on the bench, since the Fairy offense isn't incredibly useful here, and again, the very high speed stat is not necessary in the matchup. Whereas Shiliang will likely bring Calyrex, Ogerpon Amoonguss, and probably Landorus as his last pick, as Urshifu doesn't have a great time with the sun being up, and Roaring Moon isn't super useful here since he isn't going for a Tailwind game. Keep in mind that Shiliang has some incredibly niche and complex EV spreads, allowing his Pokemon to take hits they wouldn't be able to with standard spreads. Andrew, however, doesn't know how bulky Shiliang's Pokemon are, so he really needs to make perfect plays or he'll be thrown off by the surprise factor of these EV investments. Let's move into Game 1. Andrew leads full offense in Koraidon and Entei, while Shiliang leads Ogerpon Hearthflame and Calyrex. This lead is pretty expected from Andrew, as we mentioned how he wants to press his offense. Shiliang seems to be looking to commit to Trick Room rather than Tailwind. Normally, Calyrex would be highly threatened by the fire attacks from Andrew's side, but Ogerpon has Redirection with Follow Me. Ogerpon is neutral to fire attacks, and since it's so heavily trained in physical defense, neither single attack from Andrew has a guaranteed KO on this Ogerpon. Andrew will need 2 attacks to remove it. Using Follow Me to eat both attacks could guarantee Calyrex gets Trick Room up. Andrew, however, likely doesn't know exactly how bulky this Ogerpon is, and he may anticipate that a strong neutral fire attack will remove it. He commits Terra Fire on Koraidon and locks Flare Blitz into Ogerpon. And against the vast majority of Ogerpons, this would pick up a one-shot in the sun. Knowing this, he locks Sacred Fire into Calyrex. If Ogerpon does not follow me, or even if Calyrex Terras, it will take heavy damage. Shiliang, however, is not looking to win the turn, but he's aiming to win the whole set. He decides to protect Calyrex to go on the offense with Ogerpon, a very unexpected move. He also commits his Terra Fire on Ogerpon. As we mentioned, depending on Koraidon's investment, a neutral Flare Blitz could OHKO this Ogerpon if it's max attack without the Terra. This Terra Fire guarantees that Ogerpon will get in an attack since it now resists fire. With the attack boost from his Terastallization, as well as the stab boost from his Terastallization and a sun boost, he clicks a fire type Ivy Cudgel into Entei. The Flare Blitz hits into Ogerpon for just over 50% thanks to the Terra, while Entei's Sacred Fire hits into Calyrex's Protect. Lastly, Ogerpon's Ivy Cudgel deals a whopping 85% to Entei. Despite Ogerpon's low attack investment and Entei resisting it, all these boosts are really stacking up. This turn solidifies that Ogerpon is slower than Entei, which is an important piece of information. However, since Entei was able to survive the attack, and Koraidon is still at high HP, Andrew maintains the turn order advantage, and both Terras being committed point to the fact that Shiliang has a significant uphill battle here. Andrew's offense is too strong, and he still has the speed advantage to make use of it, while Ogerpon Heartflame has been quite weakened. Calyrex is now threatened by both opponents, as it cannot Terra out of its fire weakness. Even with a Follow Me to protect it, a second Flare Blitz will remove the Ogerpon, while Sacred Fire can remove Calyrex. Andrew's play is an easy decision. He locks in just that. Opting for Koraidon to attack the possible spiky shield is optimal, since Entei is so low on HP. Shiliang needs to make some defensive plays and try to gain the speed advantage with Trick Room. He's playing the long game and knows he needs Calyrex alive to win, so he switches it out. Unfortunately, both Pokemon he brought in the back, Landorusai and Amoonguss, will both be OHKO'd by these strong fire attacks. Ogerpon's best play is to Spiky Shield the likely incoming attack for some chip damage onto the attacker. Calyrex switches out for Landorus, hoping to threaten ground damage onto these fire opponents. Flare Blitz lands into the Spiky Shield, dealing chip damage to Koraidon, while Entei's Sacred Fire connects into Landorus, picking up the one-hit knockout. Calyrex comes back in after Landorus faints. The game finds itself at the same situation as last turn, with Andrew able to move first with both Pokemon and pick up KOs on both. Shiliang's only hope is to redirect the Flare Blitz with Follow Me, and hope for a Sacred Fire miss, and get up Trick Room on Calyrex. Alas, we see both Flare Blitz and Sacred Fire connect into Ogerpon and Calyrex, sending both back to their Pokeballs. Amoonguss was Shiliang's last Pokemon, so he forfeits as the Mushroom stands no chance against these fire threats. What did we learn from Game 1? We saw the power of Andrew's fire offense, picking up KO after KO, keeping up the pressure, ending the game pretty early in just 3 turns. We also saw what happens to Shiliang's team if he doesn't secure his speed control. Normally his slower tailroom Pokemon are bulky enough to take a hit and dish it back, even if they have to move last, like we saw with Ogerpon turn 1. But most opponents don't hit as hard as Andrew's Sun does. He also opted to protect and go for an offensive turn 1 rather than secure Trick Room. And this seems like a misplay as he was completely rolled after. The main explanations that I could think of are that he's trying to scout for what Andrew's playstyle is, as well as how his unique EV spreads match up into Andrew's team. Perhaps that Terrafire Ivy Cudgel had a chance to one-shot the Entei, or perhaps it would have if the Entei was trained differently. If he was able to pick up that one hit on the Entei, he would easily be able to secure Trick Room after with a Follow Me. But since we saw that isn't the case, we will definitely see that Shiliang is going to adjust how he makes his first few moves in the coming games. So we know Andrew wants to keep up his offense, and Shiliang needs to adjust to have a chance at the set. And adjust he does. We see both players choose the same leads, Koraidon and Entei for Andrew, and Calyrex and Ogerpon for Shiliang. Shiliang is clearly confident that this lead can win the game if he is willing to commit to it twice. He just needs to change up some of his moves. Andrew, on the other hand, wants to do the same thing, press damage for early KOs. He commits Sacred Fire onto Calyrex, but this time clicks Scale Shot into Ogerpon. You might think that Scale Shot could take out the Ogerpon in one turn, as again, Andrew is not certain on what this Ogerpon's defensive spread is, and he only saw it take resisted damage last turn. But again, thanks to Ogerpon's significant bulk, Scale Shot will not pick up this KO. If Calyrex is able to survive the turn and get up a Trick Room, Andrew will be moving last. Again, rather than go for the turn 1 Trick Room, Shiliang opts for a Protect and Spiky Shield, likely to scout for what Entei locks into. Scale Shot hits the Spiky Shield, while Sacred Fire hits Calyrex's Protect. We're in a similar situation as last turn, as Shiliang needs to get up Trick Room. This time, he commits his Terra Fairy to shed his fire weakness, and gain a Dragon immunity while using Follow Me on Ogerpon. This will guarantee Trick Room goes up this turn, as Andrew cannot one-shot this Ogerpon, so both moves will be redirected into it. Andrew locks in the same moves as last turn. Ogerpon goes for Follow Me, while tanking the Scale Shot from Koraidon. Entei's Sacred Fire is redirected into Ogerpon, which finishes it off. This gets the guaranteed Trick Room from Calyrex, while Landorus switches in for the fallen Ogerpon. After Trick Room goes up, the tides have significantly turned, and now Andrew is the one facing down huge damage threats. Koraidon takes strong neutral damage from a Glacial Lance, while if it terras to resist it, it'll be vulnerable to a ground attack from Landorus. Entei is in an equally awkward position, resisting ice but being weak to ground. He could Terra Normal to be neutral to both, but a double up would still likely remove it. With both of Andrew's Pokemon moving last, he needs to position defensively and stall out the Trick Room. This is an incredibly difficult task thanks to Shiliang's great team comp that can keep up the pressure turn after turn. Koraidon can protect a stall a turn, but Entei is choice locked into Sacred Fire, which will pick up a KO if it gets it off. He goes for Protect and Sacred Fire into Landorus, perhaps hoping Shiliang tries to double up the Koraidon. Shiliang here has two choices. A Glacial Lance is all but guaranteed, as it will pick up big damage on both targets. His choice is whether to use Earth Power or Sandsear Storm from Landorus. An Earth Power would guarantee that Entei goes down, while Sandsear Storm will pick up a double KO if Koraidon does not protect, provided that it hits both targets. It will also cover the Fire Terra from Koraidon if he goes for it. Shiliang also does not know for certain what Andrew has in the back. Earth Power is the safer play for sure, as Entei threatens a Sacred Fire KO on Landorus if the Sandsear Storm misses, which would bring the battle to a 4v2 in Andrew's favor. Shiliang decides to lock in Sandsear Storm, as despite the low accuracy, it covers more options than a single target Earth Power, and it keeps up the pressure he needs to use while Trick Room is active. Calyrex lands the Glacial Lance into Koraidon's Protect and Entei, dealing some damage. Landorus lands the Sandsear Storm into Koraidon's Protect, but most importantly, connecting with Entei, which finishes it off before it can attack. Andrew brings in Raging Bolt for Entei. Shiliang still has the advantage this turn. Andrew needs to preserve Koraidon and hopes he can bring it in again after Trick Room expires, and since he just protected, his only option is to switch it out. We're able to see his party, and we know that Umbreon is his last Pokemon. His niche pick will be able to tank some attacks here thanks to its amazing bulk. Raging Bolt on the other hand is weak to both ice and ground. Since Andrew has not yet spent his Terra, using it on Raging Bolt here to turn into a Fairy type is the clear play. If it can survive the double up, which is pretty likely since it won't be taking any super effective attacks, it will be able to fire back. Since Andrew's Raging Bolt has 3 electric attacks in Draco Meteor, and Shiliang's Calyrex is now a Fairy type, the most damage he can deal is using Draco Meteor into Landorus. Shiliang gets another easy turn. Thanks to his early setup, Glacial Lance and Sandsear Storm will deal huge damage to whatever Pokemon are on the field. And with 2 spread attacks, he doesn't need to worry about switches or protects. Koraidon switches out into Umbreon, while Andrew pats his Umbreon plush. Then Raging Bolt terrestrializes. Calyrex's Glacial Lance lands into both targets, dealing about 40% to both, while Draco Meteor misses Landorus. Sandsear Storm connects with both targets, bringing them both down to about 20%. Draco Meteor miss here may seem incredibly crucial, as if it landed, Landorus likely would have gone down and not gotten off at Sandsear Storm. This was many people's first instinct, including the commentators and the audience. And again, with most Landorus, Andrew's Draco Meteor here would have gotten a one-hit KO thanks to his Photosynthesis boost. But again, Shiliang's Landorus has significant bulk investment in HP. Running the calcs, we can see that Draco Meteor only has a 75% chance to one-hit KO. Not having a guaranteed KO and low accuracy, this scenario wasn't incredibly unlikely, as considering both those factors, there was about a 33% or 1/3 chance that Landorus would survive. While the miss was unfortunate, it perhaps was not the deciding factor in this match. Andrew is holding on to his last chance in this match. He could go for another Draco Meteor, but it will have to move after Calyrex, so it'll just go down to a Glacial Lance. He decides to try and deal as much damage as he can, and goes for a Thunderclap into Calyrex. With Umbreon, he locks in Moonlight to recover up and prevent Calyrex from getting a double knockout, and thus 2 attack boosts. Umbreon, of course, will need to move first to avoid the KO. We do know Shiliang's Calyrex has decent speed investment, so there's a chance that Umbreon is slower and can move first. Shiliang again makes the easy call of locking in Glacial Lance for an attack boost and a KO. Rather than risk another Sandsear Storm, however, he sees a better play. With only 2 turns of Trick Room left, he positions in a Moongus on Landorus' slot. This will be able to redirect any of Koraidon's attacks when it comes back in, allowing Calyrex to sweep with its attack boost. We see a Moongus switch in for Landorus, while Raging Bolt connects its Thunderclap into Calyrex. Umbreon moves next, getting its sun-boosted Moonlight, healing nearly to full. Calyrex lands its Glacial Lance, removing Raging Bolt and leaving Umbreon just above half HP. Koraidon comes in for Raging Bolt, which is timed well as it's able to reset the sun. We saw Umbreon move before Calyrex, meaning that it's likely slower, and will move second this turn just after Amoonguss. Thanks to Calyrex's attack boost, it's incredibly threatening. And thanks to its Terra Fairy, the only damage Umbreon can do with Foul Play will be resisted. It also resists Koraidon's Collision Course and is immune to its Scale Shot. Spore from Amoonguss is very threatening to Koraidon, as Amoonguss will move first. Sleeping Andrew's only damage threat will secure a win for Shiliang. Umbreon, however, has the Safety Goggles, so it's immune to Spore. He goes for Taunt into Amoonguss while protecting Koraidon. This ensures Amoonguss will not be able to Spore, Rage Powder, or Protect the following turn, allowing Koraidon to secure an attack into Calyrex. Trick Room also expires at the end of this turn, which will allow Koraidon to move first, pick up a KO on Calyrex, and potentially finish the game. Shiliang, however, is playing a turn ahead. He knows the pressure Spore exerts and knows that Andrew will likely protect, so he plays around it. He also knows that a taunt landing onto Amoonguss will end the game for him, so instead of trying to Spore this turn, he opts to Pollen Puff into the Umbreon, which cannot protect, and a Glacial Lance will finish Umbreon off, as well as significantly damage Koraidon if it doesn't protect. In fact, it'll likely get the KO thanks to its attack boost. We see Koraidon protect and Umbreon take around 25% from the Pollen Puff. A taunt from Umbreon here could still cripple Amoonguss and allow Koraidon to win the game. But we see Calyrex move next, with a Glacial Lance, finishing off Umbreon. This means that Umbreon and Calyrex are speed tied. This crazy coincidence seals the game for Shiliang, as Amoonguss is still free to redirect any single target attacks from Koraidon, while Calyrex can easily finish off Koraidon with now a +2 attack, not to mention Landorus still sitting healthy in the back. We see Koraidon go for a sun-boosted Flare Blitz, which finishes off the Rage Powdering Amoonguss, while the recoil from the attack, as well as a single target +2 Glacial Lance, finishes off Koraidon, tying this setup 1-1. What did we learn from Game 2? Well, we saw how Shiliang's team building and EV spreads are truly something unique, with a typically frail Ogerpon and Landorus showcasing how well these off-the-wall spreads can work on a Tail Room team. Due to Andrew's faster Pokemon, Shiliang is very confident in using Trick Room as his method of choice of speed control here over Tailwind. With 2 redirectors in Amoonguss and Ogerpon, it's incredibly difficult for Andrew to stop the Trick Room from going up, as he doesn't have much that can OHKO the Ogerpon Hearthflame, and then something else to stop Calyrex. We did see the Draco Meteor miss, which again was unfortunate, but it might not have changed much in the set, since it wasn't a guaranteed KO, and Landorus only got off 1 attack, which Calyrex might have been able to make up the damage for with support from Amoonguss. Shiliang did get somewhat lucky with all his Sand Seer Storms connecting, but there was only 3 that landed, so landing 3 out of 3 attacks is not incredibly fortunate RNG, but pretty standard. The odds are actually just barely in Shiliang's favor to hit 3 out of 3 attacks at 51%. Finding out that Andrew's slowest Pokemon and probably best Trick Room answer, Umbreon, speed ties with Calyrex, makes the matchup between these two very volatile. Shiliang's game plan seems rock solid, as he's gathered important information through Game 1 and used Protects in both games to scout Andrew's playstyle. He also brought the same 4 Pokemon to both sets, showing he's confident in his game plan. Andrew here will need to adjust, either finding a way to play around the Trick Room, or something that can prevent it from going up. Moving into Game 3, we see Shiliang's expected lead with Calyrex and Ogerpon Hearthflame, while Andrew makes an adjustment, leading Ogerpon Cornerstone and Entei. Andrew's adjustment to Cornerstone is the piece he needed to deal with Shiliang's Hearthflame, as a Terra Rock Ivy Cudgel is a guaranteed one-hit knockout into this bulky Hearthflame. Cornerstone is also faster than Entei, meaning that if Hearthflame goes for Follow Me, the Ivy Cudgel will connect, removing it, allowing a Sacred Fire from Entei to hit into Calyrex. Without the Sun, this is not a guaranteed one-hit knockout, but it will deal significant damage, even if it Terras, as well as provide a 50% burn chance, which would be crippling to Calyrex. Andrew, however, does not know exactly how bulky Shiliang's Hearthflame is, so he decides not to commit his Terra Rock when using Ivy Cudgel into Hearthflame, and clicks Sacred Fire into Calyrex. Shiliang, however, does know exactly how bulky his Hearthflame is, which we will find out shortly. He makes the same play as he did turn 1 of Game 2, which is to protect both Pokemon to gather information. Cornerstone's Ivy Cudgel hits Hearthflame's Spiky Shield, not dealing any chip damage as it's not a contact move, while Sacred Fire hits Calyrex's Protect. Andrew was confident in his last play, and since there is no new information received this turn, other than that both his opponents can't use Protect again, he makes the same play. Shiliang needs to guarantee his Trick Room, just as he did last game. so he goes for Follow Me on Hearthflame and Trick Room on Calyrex. He commits his Terastallization to Calyrex to remove its Fire and Rock weaknesses, just in case Andrew breaks through the Hearthflame in one hit. Cornerstone's Ivy Cudgel connects into Hearthflame, dealing around 95%, just barely not picking up the KO. This allows it to redirect the Sacred Fire from Entei, guaranteeing Trick Room goes up yet again. We see Landorus come in again after Hearthflame goes down. To Andrew, the casters, and the audience, this Hearthflame surviving that Ivy Cudgel was shocking. Here we really see just how bulky this Hearthflame was. Shiliang actually specifically EV'd Ogerpon for this exact reason, as we mentioned in the team analysis, to survive opposing Cornerstone's signature move Ivy Cudgel. The only way Andrew could have gained an advantage in this match was if he terastallized his Cornerstone to guarantee the one-shot onto Hearthflame, but he had no way to know it was trained for this specific situation. Shiliang also made the only play that guaranteed he would get Trick Room up as well, since if he had used Follow Me, and Andrew had gone for Terra Rock, Ogerpon would have gone down and Calyrex would have eaten the Sacred Fire. Had he not also committed his Terra Fairy Terastallization on Calyrex, it would have taken a huge amount of damage, and again possibly been burned, crippling it for the rest of the game. With Trick Room up, and Shiliang having two offensive threats that threaten super effective damage on both opponents, Andrew again finds himself in the same situation as last game. With his primary plan of preventing Trick Room gone, Andrew will again need to play around it to stall it out. He goes for a Spiky Shield on Ogerpon Cornerstone, while attempting a Sacred Fire into Landorus. Shiliang goes for the tried and true Glacial Lance, knowing Andrew is likely to protect Cornerstone, combined with the fact that he is not overly threatened by any of that slot's damage like he was last game when Koraidon was on the field. He does not need to cover both slots like last game, and is able to forego the inaccurate Sandsteer Storm for 100% accurate Earth Power into Entei. The Glacial Lance lands into Entei while bouncing off Cornerstone's Spiky Shield, and the Earth Power finishes Entei off. Andrew opts to bring in Raging Bolt. Andrew, still on the back foot, with no protects on the table, makes the best defensive play he could have in this situation. He tries to make use of Ogerpon's Sturdy and goes for an Ivy Cudgel into Calyrex, while he terastallizes Raging Bolt yet again to remove its weaknesses, while locking in a Draco Meteor into Landorus. Shiliang again locks in Glacial Lance. On Landorus, he has a couple choices. Sandsteer Storm to pick up the KO on Ogerpon, Earth Power to hope to finish off Raging Bolt, or a Sludge Bomb into Raging Bolt if he tries to predict Andrew's Terastallization. Again, he chooses the play that covers the most options, and he goes for the spread damage with Sandsteer Storm. Even if he misses both targets, he'll still be ahead next turn. Glacial Lance hits both targets, bringing Cornerstone down to 1 HP, while dealing again around 40% to Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt lands the Draco Meteor this time, but with no Photosynthesis special attack boost, there is no way it can pick up the one hit here without a critical hit, as we see Landorus survives on around 15%. Sandsteer Storm again connects with both targets, finishing off Cornerstone and leaving Raging Bolt at around 15%. Andrew sends out his last Pokemon, Koraidon, setting the sun, and thanks to a special attack drop from the Draco Meteor, Raging Bolt's defense is raised from Photosynthesis. He could have sent in Koraidon last turn to set the sun for Raging Bolt to have odds to KO the Landorus with a Draco Meteor, but he would have taken significant damage from the Glacial Lance, and again, Andrew had no way to know that without the sun, a raw Draco Meteor is not enough to one-shot this Landorus. With a low HP, -2 special attack Raging Bolt, and with Koraidon moving last in the turn order, Andrew has no way to beat the Calyrex staring him down and concedes the match, giving Shiliang the win and advancing him to the finals to face off against Justin Tang, who's running the exact same team as him. What an incredible set. We were able to see both players adjust within the set, with Shiliang changing his moves from game 1 to 2, and Andrew identifying the value of Ogerpon Cornerstone going into game 3. Some may make the argument that Shiliang just got lucky in the set and won thanks to the Draco Meteor miss and landing every Sandsteer Storm, while he just clicked strong spread moves the whole time. While move accuracy was definitely slightly in his favor, a trained eye will see how Shiliang made the best plays each turn, but sometimes clicking strong spread moves while you have the advantage just is your best play. But other times it isn't. For example, the Amoonguss switch in on game 2, and selecting Earth Power when needed over Sandsteer Storm are examples that he knows what he's doing. His ample use of Protect early in the match to scout for information was also critical in all games. The biggest aspect of Shiliang's side of the set was the significant effort put into creating this unique team. Again, some would make the case that all these instances of RNG in Shiliang's favor was a significant contributing factor to his win, but in my opinion at least, it was only a small contributing factor. But the larger contributing factor was again the unique EV spreads on this team. For example, if Andrew knew that a Terra Rock Ivy Cudgel would be enough when a flat Ivy Cudgel was not enough to take out that Heart Flame, he might have gone for it game 2. Or even game 3, and had he known that line of play could have won him the match very early on, that would have had a very different outcome on this set. And again, we can't fault Andrew here for not making that play, since he just simply didn't have the information, as it's something that's hidden even with open team sheets. I'm just hammering down the fact here that the unique spreads were a huge piece of the puzzle in this match. But it is still important to acknowledge, although the RNG was in Shiliang's favor here, it's not a really insane amount of RNG to have such a big impact on the set. For example, the things that happened were like 1/3 chance to hit all Sandseer Storms, or something like the Draco Meteor miss at 10%. These aren't chances that are in the hundreds or thousands. These are still relatively likely scenarios. I highly recommend you watch the Tang's video detailing their team building process for all the details. Lastly, Andrew was able to press his offense very well in Game 1, leading to an early victory, while he was caught off guard Games 2 and 3, thanks to the team building and Hearthflame's crazy levels of bulk. He did still, however, play quite well even after he lost speed control, timing Koraidon to come in at the right time for a Sun reset, delaying Trick Room turns with Protect, and even bringing his slower Pokemon to the matchup are all key aspects of good play. Kudos to both these players for a great set. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and share the video with someone you think would like it. If you're interested in supporting the channel directly, we do have a Patreon up, and offer coaching if you think something like this type of analysis for your games could help you improve. Thanks for watching.